My son-in-law swept my teacup off the table and told me this house wasn't mine anymore. Porcelain exploded across the kitchen tiles. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook over the mess. 72 years old, and I was kneeling on the floor like a child. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. My name is Marian Collins. I am 72 years old. I used to be a school librarian. I had been living with my daughter Olivia and her husband Grant since my hip gave out. 8 months now. 8 months of trying to be invisible in my own daughter's house. That evening started like any other. I was folding Jacob's little shirts at the kitchen table. The fabric still warm from the dryer. Grant walked in and dropped himself into my late husband's leather chair. The chair creaked under his weight. It never used to creak. Grant leaned forward. His eyes were cold. He told me he needed my pension check this month. They were short on rent, he said. I lived there, he said. I needed to contribute. The words hung in the air like smoke. Olivia stood by the sink. She said nothing. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She turned away and started washing dishes that were already clean. I looked at Grant. I looked at my daughter's bent shoulders. I said no, just no. Grant's face darkened. He stood up fast. The chair rocked back. He told me I was ungrateful. He told me I was a burden. He told me maybe I needed to think about that. I went to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed. The same bed I'd shared with my husband for 38 years. The mattress sagged in the middle where he used to sleep. Later, I walked to the pharmacy for my blood pressure pills. The October air was sharp. My hip ached with each step. But I walked slowly, breathing the cold air, trying to clear my head. When I came back, 2 suitcases sat by the front door. My suitcases. The porch light was off. The house looked different in the darkness. Colder. Like a place I'd never lived. I stood there holding my prescription bag. The plastic crinkled in my fingers. Grant opened the door before I could knock. He told me Olivia had packed my things. He told me I could stay at Della's for a while. Until I figured things out. Figured what out? I asked. He shrugged. How to be more helpful, he said. Olivia appeared behind him. Her eyes were red. She wouldn't look at me. She told me she was sorry. She told me this was temporary. She told me they just needed space to work things out. I picked up my suitcases. They felt heavier than they should have. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs. My granddaughter, 11 years old with her father's stubborn chin. She asked where I was going. Grant told her grandma was visiting Aunt Della for a few days. Emma looked at the suitcases. She looked at my face. She was 11, but she wasn't stupid. I drove away in the drizzle. My old Honda coughed and wheezed. The windshield wipers squeaked against the glass. Each squeak sounded like no, no, no. I thought about the past year. How it had changed, bit by bit. At first, Olivia welcomed me. She made up the guest room with my favorite quilt. She told me to stay as long as I needed. She told me we were family. But things shifted. Grant's voice got sharper when he spoke to me. Bills appeared on the kitchen table where I couldn't miss them. My mail started coming to their house. My bank card disappeared for 3 days. Even little Jacob started repeating things. Grandma doesn't pay rent, he said once. Like he was reciting a lesson. I had spent decades making myself smaller. Quieter. Less trouble. I cooked their meals. I read bedtime stories. I folded their laundry. I cleaned their bathrooms. I asked for nothing. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Each time I said yes to something I didn't want, I lost a piece of myself. Each time I stayed quiet when I should have spoken, I disappeared a little more. Now I was driving through the rain with 2 suitcases and nowhere to go. But I was still breathing. I was still here. And for the first time in months, I was alone with my own thoughts. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I drove through the rain and remembered how it started. Not with shouting, not with violence, with small things, quiet things. The first month at Olivia's house, she brought me tea in bed. Earl Grey with honey, the way I liked it. She fluffed my pillows. She asked if I needed anything. I felt loved then, safe. But love has a way of turning into duty. And duty has a way of turning into resentment. The tea stopped coming after the second month. Olivia said she was busy. She said I could make my own. She said I knew where the kitchen was. She was right. I didn't know where the kitchen was. I started making breakfast for everyone. Scrambled eggs and toast. Jacob liked his eggs soft. Emma liked her toast dark. Grant ate whatever was there and never said thank you. The grocery bills got higher. Olivia mentioned this often. She left receipts on the counter where I couldn't miss them, highlighted in yellow marker. The milk, the bread, the eggs I was cooking for her family. I started buying my own groceries, carrying them in from the car with my bad hip, storing them in a corner of the pantry, like a guest who had overstayed her welcome. Because that's what I was. A guest who had overstayed her welcome. My mail started coming to their house. I didn't ask for this. The post office just forwarded everything. Bills, Medicare statements, Social Security letters. Grant picked up the mail every day. He sorted through it. He handed me mine with a look. Like he was doing me a favor. One day my bank card went missing. I looked everywhere. In my purse. In my coat pockets. Between the couch cushions. 3 days later, Grant found it in his car. He said it must have fallen out of my purse. He said these things happen when you get older. He said I should be more careful. The way he said it made my skin crawl. I started keeping my purse with me at all times. Even in the bathroom. Even when I slept. The house changed around me. Or maybe I just started noticing things. How Grant sat in my husband's chair every night. How he put his feet up on the ottoman Walter had bought for my birthday 20 years ago. How Olivia stopped asking my opinion about dinner. She just cooked whatever she wanted. If I didn't like it, I could make something else. How Emma started doing her homework alone. She used to ask for my help with reading. Now she went straight to her room after school. The door closed. The lock clicked. How Jacob repeated things he heard. Grandma costs money, he said once while playing with his trucks. Grandma doesn't pay rent. Grandma takes up space. He was 7 years old. 7 years old and already learning that people are either useful or they're not. The utilities bill appeared on the kitchen table one morning. Grant had circled the total in red ink. He left a note. This went up 30% since you moved in. I stared at that note for a long time. The red ink looked like blood. I started turning off lights when I left a room. I stopped taking baths. I took showers instead. Quick ones. I wore sweaters inside so they wouldn't have to heat the house as much. I made myself smaller and smaller and smaller. But it wasn't enough. It's never enough when someone wants you gone. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I was reading to Emma before bed. We were halfway through Charlotte's Web. She was curled up against me on her little bed. Her hair smelled like strawberry shampoo. Grant appeared in the doorway. He said Emma needed to go to sleep now. He said I was keeping her up too late. Emma protested. She said we were almost at the good part. She said she wanted to hear what happened to Wilbur. Grant's voice got sharp. He told Emma that Grandma had taken up enough of her time today. He told her to say good night. Emma looked at me. Her eyes were confused, hurt. I kissed her forehead. I told her we'd finish the story tomorrow. But I knew there wouldn't be a tomorrow. Not for this. Not for us sitting together reading about friendship and loyalty and love. I knew because Grant's eyes told me. Cold eyes. Empty eyes. Eyes that saw me as a problem to be solved. That night I lay in bed listening to the house settle around me. The furnace clicked on and off. The refrigerator hummed. The old floorboards creaked under feet that weren't mine. I had lived in this house for 8 months. But it had never been my home. Home is where people want you. Home is where your presence is a gift, not a burden. This place had become a prison. And I was both the prisoner and the guard. I thought about Walter, my husband of 38 years. He would have fought for me. He would have stood up to Grant. He would have reminded Olivia that I was her mother, not her tenant. But Walter was gone, and I was alone. Alone in a house full of people who wished I wasn't there. The rain kept falling against the windows. Steady, relentless, like time itself washing away everything I thought I knew about family. About love, about home, about my place in this world. By morning, I knew what was going to happen. I could feel it in the air. In the way Olivia avoided my eyes at breakfast. In the way Grant cleared his throat when he looked at me. The storm was coming, and I was standing right in its path. I drove to Della's house through streets I'd known for 40 years. Past the elementary school where I used to work. Past the church where Walter and I were married. Past the cemetery where he now sleeps under a granite stone. Everything looked the same. But I was different now. Smaller. Broken. Della's porch light was on. It always was. She left it burning for neighbors who might need shelter. For friends who might need saving. I sat in my car for a moment. The engine ticking as it cooled. My hand still gripping the steering wheel. What would I say to her? That my own daughter threw me out? That I was 72 and homeless? The shame sat heavy in my chest. Like a stone I couldn't swallow. But Della's door opened before I could decide. She must have heard my car. She must have been waiting. She walked down her front steps in her bathrobe and slippers. The porch light made her gray hair look silver. Her face was worried but not surprised. She opened my car door without saying a word. She helped me out like I was made of glass. Della Harris, my friend for 53 years. We met in the hospital when our babies were born 3 days apart. Olivia and her son David. 2 women scared and young and learning how to be mothers. Now her David lives in California with his wife and children. They visit twice a year. They call every Sunday. They send pictures. My Olivia lives 15 minutes away and wishes I would disappear. Della didn't ask questions. She just took my arm and walked me to her door. My suitcases could wait, she said. We had more important things to worry about. Her house smelled like peppermint tea and lavender soap. The same smells I remembered from all those years of friendship. Birthday parties for our children. Coffee after church. Quiet conversations when our husbands worked late. She led me to her kitchen table. The same oak table where we'd solved 1,000 problems over the years. Divorce. Death. Wayward teenagers. Money troubles. Loneliness. But never this. Never a daughter who turns her back on her mother. Della put the kettle on. She moved slowly but with purpose. Her arthritis was bad, but she never complained. She never made her pain everyone else's problem. The kitchen was warm. Yellow walls. White curtains with tiny blue flowers. A ceramic rooster on the windowsill that her grandmother had given her. Everything in its place. Everything loved and cared for. I sat at the table and felt something crack inside me. Not break. Crack. Like ice beginning to thaw. Della brought 2 cups of peppermint tea. The steam rose between us. She sat down across from me and waited. I told her what happened. All of it. The pension demand. The suitcases by the door. Grant's cold eyes. Olivia's silence. My voice stayed steady while I talked. But my hands shook around the teacup. Della listened without interrupting. She nodded in the right places. She made soft sounds of understanding and anger. When I finished, she reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was warm and dry and familiar. She told me she'd been waiting for this call. She said she could see what was happening. She said everyone could see it except me. I asked her why she didn't say anything. She said you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. She said people have to reach their own breaking point. She said some lessons can only be learned alone. But now I was here. And I wasn't alone anymore. She showed me to her spare bedroom. The same room where I'd stayed when Walter was in the hospital those last 3 weeks. Where I'd cried myself to sleep night after night. The bed was made with fresh sheets. White cotton that smelled like sunshine and fabric softener. A glass of water on the nightstand. A small lamp with a yellow shade. Home, I thought. This feels like home. Della brought my suitcases in from the car. She didn't ask how long I was staying. She didn't mention rent or expenses or how much trouble I was causing. She just hung my coats in the closet and put my toothbrush in the bathroom like I belonged there. That night I lay in the dark listening to unfamiliar sounds. Della's old house settling. The furnace cycling on and off. A cat yowling somewhere in the neighborhood. But for the first time in months, I felt safe. Safe to think my own thoughts. Safe to feel my own feelings. Safe to be angry. Because I was angry. Not at Olivia. Not even at Grant. At myself. For shrinking. For apologizing. For believing that love meant erasing yourself. I had spent 8 months trying to earn my place in that house. Cooking and cleaning and staying quiet. Making myself useful. Making myself small. But useful isn't the same as loved. And small isn't the same as welcome. I thought about Emma, my granddaughter with the stubborn chin and the kind eyes. How she looked at me when Grant said I was keeping her up too late. Confused. Hurt. Learning that adults lie. That families break. That people you love can become strangers overnight. What was I teaching her by accepting this treatment? What lesson was my silence giving her about her own worth? I rolled over and stared at the ceiling. Shadows from the streetlight moved across the plaster. Like fingers reaching. Like hands letting go. Tomorrow I would start making calls. To my bank. To my lawyer. To anyone who could help me untangle the mess my life had become. Tonight I would sleep in a bed where I was wanted. In a house where my presence was a gift, not a burden. I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet. Real quiet. Not the angry quiet of people who wished you weren't there. The quiet of peace. The quiet of safety. The quiet of a woman finally ready to stop running from her own life. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I woke to the smell of bacon and coffee. Real coffee. Not the instant kind I'd been drinking to save money. The kind that fills a house with warmth and promise. Della was at the stove making breakfast. She wore a blue flowered apron tied around her waist. Her silver hair was pinned back with bobby pins. She looked like safety. She looked like home. I sat at her kitchen table and made a list in my notebook. The same notebook I'd carried in my purse for 20 years. The one where I wrote grocery lists and doctor appointments and phone numbers I might forget. Today I was writing something different. A battle plan. First item, the bank. Take back control of my accounts. Second item, the lawyer. Change my will. Remove the vultures. Third item, find my own place. A place where no one could throw me out. The pen felt heavy in my hand. Each word was a decision. Each decision was a door closing behind me. Della brought me scrambled eggs and buttered toast. She poured coffee into a blue ceramic mug. She didn't ask about my list. She didn't need to. After breakfast, I drove to First National Bank on Maple Street. The same bank where Walter and I had opened our first checking account in 1971. Where we'd gotten our mortgage. Where we'd saved for Emma and Jacob's college funds. The building looked smaller than I remembered. Gray brick and narrow windows. A place built for keeping secrets safe. I walked to the customer service desk. My legs felt unsteady. My mouth was dry. The young man behind the counter had kind eyes and a name tag that read Samuel. He looked like he might be Emma's age if she were grown. Too young to understand what it means to lose everything. But when I told him what I needed, his face grew serious. Professional. I needed to revoke all outside access to my accounts. I needed new bank cards. I needed to change my PIN numbers. I needed to make sure no one else could touch my money ever again. Samuel printed forms. He explained each signature line. He spoke slowly and clearly like I mattered. Like my decisions had weight. I signed my name over and over. Marian Elizabeth Collins. Each signature felt like armor. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened a trust account. For Emma, my granddaughter with the stubborn chin and the kind heart. The money would sit there waiting for her until she turned 25. Old enough to understand its value. Old enough to use it wisely. Grant couldn't touch it. Olivia couldn't touch it. Nobody could touch it except Emma when she was ready. Samuel stamped the papers with a heavy metal stamp. The sound echoed in the quiet bank. Like a judge's gavel. Like justice being served. I walked out of that bank feeling different. Stronger. Like I'd reclaimed something stolen. Next stop, Margaret Lee's law office on 3rd Street. Margaret had handled Walter's will when he died. She was older than me, probably pushing 80, but her mind was sharp as a blade. Her white hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her suit was navy blue and perfectly pressed. She remembered me. She asked about Emma and Jacob. She offered me tea in a china cup with tiny roses painted on the rim. Then she listened while I told her what I needed. New will. New power of attorney. New healthcare directive. New everything. I wanted Olivia removed from all my documents. Completely. Grant had never been on them to begin with, but I wanted that made crystal clear. Margaret took notes on a yellow legal pad. Her handwriting was precise. Each letter formed carefully, like she was building something that couldn't be torn down. She asked if I was sure about disinheriting Olivia. She said these decisions were hard to undo. I told her I was sure. This wasn't revenge, I said. This was correction. Margaret nodded. She'd seen this before. Families that broke apart over money. Children who forgot their parents were people, not piggy banks. She would have new documents ready by Friday. I could come back then to sign everything. Make it official. Make it final. I drove home to Della's house with my purse full of receipts and business cards. Evidence of a day spent taking back my life. Della was in her garden pulling weeds. October was late for gardening, but some things needed tending regardless of season. I sat on her back steps and watched her work. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. Pull the weed. Shake off the dirt. Toss it in the bucket. She asked how my day went. I told her about Samuel at the bank. About Margaret and the new will. About Emma's trust fund. Della nodded and kept pulling weeds. She said it sounded like I was building walls. Good strong walls that nobody could climb over. That night I called Emma. I used Della's landline because I didn't trust my cell phone anymore. Too many ways for people to track you. Too many ways for them to find you when you didn't want to be found. Emma answered on the second ring. Her voice was small and worried. She asked if I was okay. She asked when I was coming home. I told her I was safe. I told her I was staying with Aunt Della for a while. I told her I loved her more than all the stars in the sky. She said she missed me. She said Jacob was asking about me too. She said Mom had been crying. My heart twisted, but I didn't waver. Crying was easy. Changing was hard. I told Emma I would see her soon. But things were going to be different now. She was old enough to understand that sometimes adults make mistakes. That sometimes families need time to heal. She said she understood, but I could hear the confusion in her voice. The hurt. After I hung up, I sat in Della's kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea. The house was quiet except for the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I thought about the papers I'd signed today. The signatures that changed everything. For 72 years, I'd lived for other people. Walter, Olivia, the grandchildren, always putting their needs first. Always making myself smaller to make them comfortable. Today I'd started living for myself. It felt strange, like wearing a coat that didn't quite fit yet. But it also felt right. Tomorrow I would start looking for an apartment. Somewhere small and clean and mine. Tonight I would sleep in Della's spare room one more time. Protected by friendship. Surrounded by safety. But already planning my escape into something bigger than I'd ever imagined. Independence. At 72 years old. Better late than never. I found the apartment on a Tuesday morning in November. It wasn't much to look at from the outside. A 2-story brick building above Murphy's laundromat. Narrow windows. Chipped paint on the front door. But it was mine. Or it could be. The landlord was Mrs. Chen, a small woman with silver streaks in her black hair. She wore a red cardigan buttoned up to her chin. Her hands were soft when she shook mine. She led me up a narrow staircase. The steps creaked under our feet. The handrail was smooth from years of hands gripping it. The apartment was on the second floor. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But the afternoon light poured through the windows like honey. Golden and warm and full of promise. Mrs. Chen showed me around. The refrigerator hummed quietly in the corner. The kitchen cabinets squeaked when she opened them. The bathroom had a clawfoot tub with rust stains around the drain. Perfect imperfections. Signs of life lived within these walls. The bedroom was small but bright. A closet with sliding doors. A window that looked out over the parking lot and the street beyond. I could see myself here. reading by the window, making tea in the tiny kitchen, sleeping in a bed that belonged to no one but me. Mrs. Chen asked about references, about income, about how long I planned to stay. I told her I was retired, that I had steady pension income, that I was looking for somewhere to call home. She studied my face like she was reading a book. Then she quoted the rent. First month plus security deposit. I wrote the check right there. Standing in that empty apartment with sunlight warming my shoulders. Mrs. Chen folded the check carefully and put it in her purse. She handed me 2 keys on a plain metal ring. The keys felt warm in my palm, heavy with possibility. I moved in 3 days later. Della helped me pack my few belongings. My clothes, my books, Walter's photograph in its silver frame. The second-hand furniture store delivered a bed and a small kitchen table. A dresser with a mirror that reflected light around the room. I bought sheets at Walmart. White cotton with tiny blue flowers. A blue blanket soft as a whisper. 2 pillows that smelled like fresh laundry. My first night alone, I slept on the floor. The bed wouldn't arrive until morning. But I didn't mind. I lay on my new blue blanket and listened to the sounds of my independence. The laundromat below closing for the night. Washing machines winding down. Dryers tumbling to a stop. Cars passing on the street. Their headlights sweeping across my ceiling. Strangers going home to their own lives. A train whistle in the distance. Long and mournful. Like a song of longing. Or freedom. I woke to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. No one telling me to get up. No one asking what was for breakfast. No one needing anything from me. Just me. Marian Collins, 72 years old, living alone for the first time in 5 decades. The silence felt strange, not empty, full of choices that belonged to me. I made coffee in my new kitchen. The pot gurgled and hissed on the stove. The smell filled my small apartment. My apartment. Mine. I placed Walter's photograph on the windowsill. His smile caught the morning light. He looked proud, like he approved of this new chapter. I missed him, but I didn't feel abandoned. Not anymore. That afternoon I walked to the grocery store. I bought whatever I wanted. Strawberries even though they were expensive. Good cheese. A bottle of wine I'd never tasted. At home, I arranged my purchases on my kitchen counter. Colors bright against the white formica. Red strawberries. Yellow cheese. Dark wine bottle with a fancy label. A feast. For one. I found a second-hand armchair at a consignment shop on Oak Street. Sea green fabric with wooden arms worn smooth. It fit perfectly by my bedroom window. I sat in that chair and watched the world outside. People walking dogs. Children riding bicycles. Life happening without my involvement or approval. For the first time in years, I felt no responsibility for anyone else's happiness. No guilt about disappointing people. No fear of taking up too much space. The apartment settled around me like a comfortable dress. The refrigerator hummed its quiet song. The floorboards creaked under my feet. The radiators clanked to life when evening came. Ordinary sounds. Peaceful sounds. The soundtrack of a life lived for myself. I called Emma on my 3rd night. She asked if I was lonely. She asked if I needed anything. I told her I was learning how to be alone. That alone wasn't the same as lonely. That sometimes you had to lose everything to find out who you really were. She didn't understand yet. She was 11. At 11, being alone feels like punishment. But someday she would understand. Someday she would need her own room. Her own choices. Her own keys to her own life. I bought plants for my windowsills. Small green things that needed only water and light. They made my apartment feel alive. Like something was growing here. Like I was growing here. Each morning I woke to sunlight and possibility. Each evening I cooked dinner for one and felt grateful instead of sorry. This was what freedom looked like. Not grand or dramatic. Just small and quiet and mine. A apartment above a laundromat. Sea green chair by the window. Plants reaching toward the light. Coffee when I wanted it. Strawberries because they were beautiful. Wine with dinner if I felt like it. No one asking for my pension check. No one leaving bills where I couldn't miss them. No one sighing when I entered a room. Just me, learning how to live again. Learning how to want things. Learning how to take up exactly as much space as I needed. At 72, I was finally growing up. And it felt like coming home to myself. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The first text came on a Thursday morning. I was sitting in my sea green chair with coffee and toast. Watching the morning light move across my kitchen counter. My phone buzzed on the windowsill. The sound was sharp in the quiet apartment. The message was from Olivia. Mom, why did you leave? We need to talk. I stared at the words for a long time. The letters blurred together, became meaningless shapes on a small screen. Why did I leave? She knew why I left. She was there when Grant swept my teacup off the table. She was there when my suitcases appeared by the door. She was there, and she said nothing. I turned off the phone. Placed it face down on the windowsill. Went back to my coffee and toast. More messages came throughout the day. I could hear the phone buzzing. Demanding attention. Demanding answers. But I wasn't ready to give answers. I wasn't sure I ever would be. That evening I turned the phone back on. 7 messages from Olivia. 3 missed calls. Each message was longer than the last. More desperate. More demanding. Please call me back. I don't understand what happened. Grant says you just got upset about nothing. Mom, please. We're family. Family. As if that word could erase what they'd done. As if blood meant you could treat people like garbage and expect forgiveness. I deleted the messages without reading them all. Some conversations weren't worth having. The next morning brought a different kind of message. Simple words that made my heart skip. Grandma, are you okay? I miss you. Emma, my granddaughter with the stubborn chin and the kind heart. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was small and worried. She asked if I was safe. If I had enough to eat. If I was cold in my new place. Questions that showed she understood what caring looked like. What love actually meant. I told her I was fine. Better than fine. I told her about my apartment. About the plants on my windowsill. About the train whistle I heard at night. She listened like my words mattered. Like my happiness was important to her. I asked about school. About her friends. About the book we'd been reading together. She said she'd finished Charlotte's Web on her own. She said it made her cry when Charlotte died. She said she understood now why friendship was so important. We talked for 20 minutes. About books and dreams and the way sunlight looked different in winter. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Like part of me had been returned. 2 days later, Grant called. His name appeared on my phone screen like a curse word. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. I wanted to hear what excuse he would use. What lie he would tell. His voice was smooth. Practiced. He'd rehearsed this conversation. He said he was sorry about the misunderstanding. That stress made him say things he didn't mean. That I was welcome to come back anytime. Misunderstanding. As if throwing me out was some kind of communication error. I listened to his performance without speaking. Let him dig his own grave with words. He said Olivia missed me. That the kids asked about me every day. That the house wasn't the same without me. Then came the real reason for his call. They were behind on the mortgage payment. The electric bill was past due. Things were tight without my contribution. There it was, the truth hiding behind the apology. They didn't miss me, they missed my pension check. I told him I wouldn't discuss this. My voice was calm and final. He tried to argue, tried to guilt me, tried to remind me of all they'd done for me. All they'd done for me. Like housing me was charity instead of family obligation. Like accepting my help was doing me a favor. I hung up while he was still talking. Afterwards I sat in my chair and watched the traffic below. Cars going somewhere. People with purposes and destinations. I felt no guilt about hanging up. No regret about refusing his plea for money. For the first time in years, someone else's financial emergency wasn't my responsibility. The relief was overwhelming. More texts came over the next few days. From Olivia. Long paragraphs about misunderstandings and family loyalty and giving people second chances. I read them all, then deleted them all. Some bridges needed to stay burned. But Emma's messages I answered immediately. Pictures of her art projects. Stories about her day. Questions about my new life. She asked if she could visit. If she could see my apartment and my plants and my sea green chair. I told her yes. Of course yes. She was always welcome in my home. Because that's what love looked like. Not demands or guilt trips or manipulation. Just simple acceptance. Just wanting someone's happiness more than your own convenience. Emma understood this at 11 years old. Her mother never had. One evening my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Maybe hope. Maybe foolishness. It was Jacob, my grandson. His voice was small and uncertain. He said he missed me. He said he was sorry I was mad at them. He said Daddy told him it was all a big mistake. My heart broke a little. He was 7 years old. Too young to understand that adults lie. That families break. That sometimes love isn't enough. I told him I wasn't mad at him. That I would never be mad at him. That grown-up problems weren't his fault. He asked when I was coming home. I told him I was already home. That I'd found a new place where I was happy. That maybe he could visit sometime. After we hung up, I cried. Not from sadness. From relief. I had protected Emma's trust fund. I had secured my own future. I had built a life that couldn't be taken away. But the cost was high. 2 grandchildren who didn't understand. A daughter who had chosen her husband over her mother. Still, I regretted nothing. Some prices were worth paying for freedom. Emma came to visit on a Saturday afternoon in December. Olivia drove her. I watched from my window as they sat in the car outside my building. Mother and daughter having what looked like a serious conversation. Emma got out first. She looked up at my window and waved. Her smile was bright against the gray winter day. Olivia stayed in the car. Engine running. Like she was ready to escape at any moment. I buzzed Emma up. Her footsteps were quick on the narrow stairs. Light and eager. The sound of someone who actually wanted to be here. When I opened my door, she threw herself into my arms. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and winter air. Like childhood and possibility. She pulled back and studied my face. checking to make sure I was really okay. That I wasn't just pretending for her sake. I must have passed her inspection because her smile returned. Wider than before. I showed her around my small apartment. She admired my plants on the windowsills. She tested my sea green chair for comfort. She pronounced my kitchen perfect for making cookies. So we made cookies. Chocolate chip with extra vanilla. The kind I used to make when she was little and the world seemed simpler. She stood on a step stool at my counter. Her small hands mixing dough. Her tongue poking out in concentration. The apartment filled with the smell of butter and sugar. Of home and safety and love. While the cookies baked, we sat at my tiny kitchen table. She told me about school. About her friend Madison who had moved away. About the new girl in her class who ate lunch alone. I listened like her words were precious. Because they were. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. Why did you leave us, Grandma? I looked at this child. 11 years old. Old enough for truth but young enough to be hurt by it. I chose my words carefully. I told her I didn't leave them. I was pushed out. Her face grew serious. Adult serious. She said she knew that. She said she saw how Daddy talked to me. How Mom just stood there and let it happen. The cookies timer rang. I got up to take them from the oven. My hands shook slightly as I moved the hot pan to the cooling rack. Emma climbed down from her chair and came to stand beside me. She slipped her hand into mine. She said it felt like they were using me. Like I was a thing instead of a person. Out of the mouths of babes. I squeezed her hand. Told her she was very smart. Very observant. She asked if I was angry at her mom. I sat back down at the table. Pulled her onto my lap like I used to when she was smaller. I told her I was disappointed. That anger was hot and loud, but disappointment was cold and quiet and lasted longer. I told her that people aren't things. That family shouldn't be something you earn by being useful. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. I told her she didn't have to choose sides. That this was between the grown-ups. That I would always love her no matter what happened. But I also told her to remember what she was seeing. To remember how it felt when someone was treated badly. So she would never treat anyone that way herself. She promised she would remember. She asked if I was lonely in my apartment. I told her the truth. That I had been lonely in their house. Surrounded by people who saw me as a burden. But I wasn't lonely here. Here I was just alone. And alone was peaceful. We ate warm cookies and drank cold milk. She told me about the books she was reading. About her dreams of becoming a veterinarian. About the stray cat she'd been feeding in secret. Normal grandmother-granddaughter conversation. The kind we should have been having all along. When it was time to leave, she hugged me tight. She whispered that she loved me. That she would visit again soon. I walked her downstairs to where Olivia waited in the car. The engine was still running. Still ready for quick escape. Olivia rolled down her window. Her eyes were red from crying. Her makeup was smeared. She said my name like a question. Like she wasn't sure I would answer. I looked at my daughter. This woman who had grown in my body. Who had taken her first steps holding my fingers. Who had run to me with scraped knees and broken hearts. She asked if we could talk. Just for a minute. I told her there was nothing to talk about. She had made her choice. I had made mine. She said she was sorry. That she should have stood up to Grant. That she should have protected me. Should have. Past tense. Too late. I told her sorry was a word. Action was different. She had plenty of chances to act. She chose silence every time. Emma pressed her face to the car window. Watching this adult drama she was too young to navigate. Olivia looked at her daughter. Then back at me. She said she missed me. That the house wasn't the same. I almost laughed. Of course it wasn't the same. No one was cooking their meals. No one was folding their laundry. No one was reading bedtime stories while she scrolled through her phone. I told her she knew where to find me if she ever decided what was more important. Her mother or her husband's bank account. Then I went back upstairs. Left them sitting in the car with the engine running. Later that evening, I found an envelope slipped under my door. My name written in Olivia's careful handwriting. Inside was a letter. Short and honest. No excuses this time. No requests for forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. Of what she had allowed to happen. Of what she had failed to do. Of what it cost. I read it twice. Then placed it on my refrigerator. Held there by a magnet shaped like a strawberry that Emma had given me. Not because I was ready to forgive. But because honesty deserved to be seen. Even when it came too late to change anything. That night I sat in my chair by the window. Watched the traffic lights change from red to green to yellow. Watched people going home to their own complicated families. Emma would be doing her homework now. Jacob would be watching cartoons. Olivia would be making dinner and wondering if she'd lost her mother forever. I felt no satisfaction in their uncertainty. No victory in their discomfort. Just sadness. For what we had lost. For what we had never really had. But also peace. For what I had found. For who I was becoming. At 72, I was learning that love without respect was just pretty slavery. And I was too old to be anyone's slave. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. On a cold Monday in January, I signed the final papers at Margaret's office. The last will and testament. The new power of attorney. The healthcare directive that named Della as my decision maker. Every document that had once included Olivia now carried different names. Or no names at all. Margaret stamped each page with her heavy seal. The sound echoed in her quiet office like doors slamming shut. She asked one final time if I was certain about these changes. If I understood they would be difficult to undo. I told her I had never been more certain of anything in my life. She nodded and placed the papers in a manila folder. My name written across the tab in her precise handwriting. Marian Elizabeth Collins. A life reorganized. A future secured. Outside, snow was beginning to fall. Tiny flakes that melted as soon as they touched the sidewalk. I walked to Peterson's Bakery on Main Street. The same bakery where Walter used to buy my birthday cakes. Where we'd gotten Emma's first birthday cake shaped like a ladybug. The bell above the door chimed when I entered. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon filled the air. I bought myself a cinnamon roll. Warm and sticky with glaze. Exactly what I wanted at exactly the moment I wanted it. I sat by the window and ate it slowly. Watching people hurry past in the cold. Each bite was deliberate. Savored. This was what freedom tasted like. Sweet and warm and chosen for no reason except desire. When I finished, I walked home through the falling snow. My apartment building looked different in the white light. Softer somehow. More welcoming. Mrs. Chen was salting the front steps. She waved when she saw me. Asked how I was settling in. I told her I had never been happier anywhere in my life. She smiled and said she could tell. Said the building felt more like home with me in it. Home. I was finally home. Upstairs, I made tea and sat in my sea green chair. The radiator clanked to life. The snow fell heavier now, covering my windows like lace curtains. I opened my notebook. The same one where I'd written my battle plan months ago. Where I'd listed all the ways to take back my life. Every item was crossed off now. Every goal achieved. Bank accounts secured. Legal documents updated. Trust fund established. Apartment rented. Independence claimed. I turned to a fresh page and wrote, I am still here, and I have enough. Enough money for rent and groceries and small luxuries. Enough space for my books and plants and memories. Enough peace for reading and thinking and simply being. Enough love from people who actually cared about me. The phone rang. Emma's number on the caller ID. Her voice was excited. She'd gotten an A on her book report about Charlotte's Web. She'd written about friendship and loyalty and how some people keep their promises. I told her I was proud of her. That she understood the important things. She asked if she could come visit again soon. Maybe next weekend. Maybe we could make cookies again. I told her yes. Always yes for her. After we hung up, I sat in the growing twilight. The snow had stopped falling. The street lights came on one by one. My apartment felt full despite being small. Full of possibility. Full of peace. Full of a life that belonged entirely to me. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw Olivia. She stood in the hallway holding a paper bag. Her coat was damp from snow. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She looked older than when I'd last seen her. Tired. Like someone who'd been carrying a weight too heavy for her shoulders. She held out the bag. Inside were homemade cookies. Chocolate chip. The kind we used to make together when she was Emma's age. She said she'd been thinking about what I told her. About choosing sides. About what was important. She said she'd asked Grant to leave. That the divorce papers were filed. That she was starting over at 43. I looked at my daughter. This woman who had finally chosen her mother over her bank account. She said she wasn't asking for forgiveness. Not yet. She knew she had to earn that. If it was even possible. She just wanted me to know that she'd heard me. That she was trying to do better. I took the bag of cookies. They were still warm. Made with the same recipe I'd taught her 20 years ago. I told her it was a start. Just a start. But starts were important. She nodded and turned to leave. Then stopped and looked back. She said she loved me. That she'd always loved me. That love wasn't always enough, but it was something to build on. I watched her walk down the hallway. Her footsteps echoing off the walls. The sound of someone walking away from their old life toward something unknown. Back inside, I tasted one of her cookies. It was good. Not quite right, but good. She'd forgotten the extra vanilla. But the love was there in the careful mixing. In the perfect timing. In the courage to come here at all. I placed the bag on my counter next to my morning coffee cup. Next to my small bottle of wine. Next to the strawberries I'd bought because they were beautiful. Evidence of a life lived for myself. But not entirely alone. That night I pulled out the old list I'd kept for months. The one where I'd written all my sacrifices. All the ways I'd made myself smaller for other people's comfort. I tore it into small pieces. Let the fragments fall into the wastebasket like snow. I didn't need proof of my giving anymore. I didn't need evidence of my worth. I had something better. A quiet apartment where no one demanded rent for my existence. A granddaughter who believed in kindness. A daughter who was finally learning what love meant. And most importantly, I had myself. 72 years old and finally growing into who I was meant to be. Free. Enough. Home. I turned off the lights and went to bed in my own room. In my own apartment. In my own life. Outside, the snow began falling again, covering the world in clean white silence. Inside, I slept the sleep of someone who had fought for her freedom and won. Tomorrow would bring new choices, new possibilities, new chances to live authentically. But tonight was perfect exactly as it was. Quiet and mine and enough.